Welcome to Booked All Night, the podcast for storytellers and book lovers alike. I'm your host, Jessica Mary, and I'm joined weekly by Leigh and Magdalyn Ann as we geek out over great books and the craft of writing them. This week, we're discussing chapters 21 through 29 of The Rise of Issa Igwe by Shanna Miles, which will finish our discussion series on the title. While I have your attention, don't forget to click the link in the show notes to find our Discord server, website, and socials. As an official Libronaut on our server, you'll be able to listen in on our author interviews live and drop a question to add to ours. All right, my little Libronauts, buckle up, settle in, and let's launch back into The Rise of Issa Igwe. Show tunes. I edit all the music and I still don't remember what our theme song sounds like. Oh yeah. Woo. All right, so we're back with the teachers in a box, right?
Yes, we got our little Jack in the Box teachers going on.
Teacher in the box.
COVID precautions.
Yeah. Which were weird but cool but weird.
Yeah.
I
almost wanted more out of them, honestly.
I did too. I felt like
they could have been a very cool thing, and it just kind of felt like a excuse to lore dump, or at least get the very last bit of details that we need.
Yeah,
put out into the world.
Yeah, I felt like that about them too, especially because the way that she clarifies information with the Mistress Victoria puppet, right? Mm-hmm. She's just like, okay, do you have all the knowledge that Mistress Victoria does? Awesome. And can you retain anything that I ask you? No? Awesome. And her first question is just straight up, how soon is Headmistress Serena going to try to kill me? Like,
that was very funny. I liked that a lot, actually.
That was funny. But the rest of it, you're right. It is this big lore dump. We learn a lot about the sirens. We learn about the, I'm making the motion like we're not an audio medium. The parasite, right? The femeline that we find out that Headmistress Serena has inside of her. And I'm like, I wish there was more of that, right? Because I think the last time we really called to something going on inside of Headmistress Serena was when we peered in through the window and we kind of saw that like tentacle monster with her in the and that was it. So like there's a lot that gets called to here in this final act of the book that I wish had more that built up to it.
Yeah.
There's also a line in this lore dump where the Mistress Victoria poppet is like, well, a string of dead children is hard to hide. And I'm like, is it though? Because it seems more like everybody has just been ignoring the dead children because everyone has known about the dead children at the Siren School. We know that there's the graveyard there. We know almost every year somebody dies there. We know that if you die there, your soul is kind of stuck there. Like, were they hidden? They weren't hidden at all. They were kind of flaunted, to be honest.
Yeah. It was... It just felt, this whole like exposition part that we got from the puppets just felt like too much. I feel like, I agree with you, if it was like spread out and built up towards, it would have been a little bit better, but this is just a wall of information right in our face. It's like the entire chapter is just the puppet explaining sirens and symbiotic creatures.
Yeah, and the parasite and things. I wish she had learned about those things in classes.
Yeah.
And that we'd gotten to explore more like Care of Magical Creatures kind of thing throughout the rest of the thing, throughout the rest of the story, the rest of the thing, like whatever. But I mean, it's important information for what we're about to go through, but I feel like it's only important information for this last act.
Yeah.
That,
like if we had Myra like info dumping or just talking about the thing they learned in biology class today or herbology today about these, parasites that like to live in the plants and sucks up all the seeds or something that we could like kind of infer as a metaphor for the thing that's in the headmistress's stomach.
Yeah.
Womb, I guess, technically, but
Yeah. I was kind of disappointed in that. I mean, like, there's a lot of good stuff that happens back here. I say as we open up the podcast with like, so I didn't love it. You know? Then
on the bright side, no interdimensional basketball game to save the universe.
There was no.
I was very afraid of it, especially when we got like towards the climax and there were still 2 chapters left. I'm like, this is enough for a basketball game. What are you doing?
I was like, no basketball game, no basketball game, no Space Jam, no Space Jam, no Space Jam.
I guess we'll talk more about the ending later, but I have conflicted feelings.
I do too. There's a big thing that I have conflicted feelings about, and I know that I mentioned it last week about how I don't want this particular thing to happen, and it did happen. So that comes up later. I wanna go like right in order of the things that happen. So Issa finds out that the professors, well, you know, the teachers, not the professors, but they found a footprint, and that's part of the reason that they are currently shut down. And so she sneaks out using these psychedelic Kool-Aid pickles again, and goes down to Master Gonzalez's, and she's like, hey, heard you found something. And he was like, and that was worth sneaking out. Like, it just turned out to be like a little fire-breathing egret, which is basically like, yeah, we found a gecko on campus. Why are you out of your room? Whatever, now you're going to help me like muck out stables and get these horses to get some exercise and everything else. And in this scene, he gives her a talking to, like this little tete-a-tete that I think she's had coming for a while, where he's like, you know, your behavior is very self-sabotaging, that you keep sneaking out, you're not really doing the studies that you should be doing, and, you know, it's harmful. I don't think that you're dealing with things the way that you need to be dealing with them. And she does kind of say back to him, she's like, that's nice. Because in her defense, Headmistress Serena is trying to kill her.
That is true.
But yeah, she didn't exactly go about this in a way that was like undercover in any sense of that word, to be honest.
She was about as subtle as a brick wall when it came to going on her little adventures. About
as subtle as a house fire, one might say.
Or a barn fire in this situation.
A barn fire, exactly.
But when she gets back from talking to Master Gonzalez, right? He's like, oh, you better go back before someone finds you. And, you know, out of the, you know, goodness of my heart, I'm not going to report you for this.
Yeah.
Being the cool teacher and all that. So she goes back. But unfortunately, as soon as she opens the door,
surprise!
Dun, 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 Mistress Serena is right there. It's like, where have you been, little missy?
Yeah. And then there's that trial, and like the trial was really weird because it was like, why is this happening at a school? Number one. Number two, Issa immediately calls it out for what it is. She's like, this is crap.
I love that. The line was like, I don't recognize the authority of this court.
Yeah, I don't recognize the authority of this court. And then what was something like, only God can judge me. And they were like, who said that? Who said that? I was like, it was Tupac Shakur.
Right, but she credited it to Rachel, the dead girl from several centuries ago. And she kind of like, and she gave the mistress like a little knowing side eye. But like we see like the quote unquote witnesses of all of her actions sort of come up, and a few defend her and a few are making it really sound like she set the fire in the barn, and she was up to no good and all that. And then she knows where this is heading. She refuses to make a statement, and she lays down some groundwork for when she wants to come back later, because this entire time we see Headmistress Serena, and she is gaunt. She is sickly looking. Her hair is falling out in clumps. And she gets a note from Myra, which points out the hair. And she goes, I can make what is essentially a voodoo doll. A doll, DAWL, doll.
Yes.
out of the Heron, and that's like her key to taking her on, using it to control her and to, you know, slow her down so she doesn't actually hurt Issa too fast.
Yes.
And I really like that.
I liked that too. I like that it showed not only the friendship that like Myra is clearly terrified of what's happening, but she's like, hair. Like, you can get her hair. Her hair fell out. Go get her hair. I thought that was really good. That's another really great piece of characterization about like the problem solving and looking ahead and just the creativity and intelligence of this character. So I really did enjoy that, and going to go get this and finally getting an explanation from when Aunt Sabrina was like, don't forget your dolls. And Issa the entire time was like, what dolls?
I never played with the American Girl dolls, Aunt Sabrina.
What?
Until she has the realization that she's like, oh, I misheard. It's a homonym.
Yeah. And then we get to see her make those, and
yeah,
this was another point where she manipulates somebody else. Right? She asks Odette, she's like, I need a candle. I'm really afraid of the dark. And Odette is like, yeah, there's fireflies in here, and like they're magic. They'll keep the place nice and toasty and well lit. You don't have to worry about anything. And Issa basically just bats her big puppy dog eyes and gets what she wants.
Yeah, that's what she does with the earring too. Yeah, she goes to Odette. She goes, oh no, I have lost my earring. Please, can we go back and get it? It belonged to my mother. I feel like it was exactly like that, but you know, she was trying to put on her little acting skills.
Right, but I feel like you know, my parents are dead and I lost something that belonged to my mother is a right better than I'm afraid of the dark. Heavy blink, heavy blink, heavy blink.
That's true.
Please give me 2 candles.
That's true, but she also, you know, when they get back to the chapel so she can quote unquote search for her missing earring, she's wandering up onto the dais where Headmistress Serena was to get the hair. And Odette's like, why are you up there? It wouldn't be up there. You know, your footsteps sound different on the dais than they do on the stone floor of the chapel. She goes, oh, I'm just being extra thorough.
Like, how bad do you have to be at sneaking that the blind girl calls you out on it?
Yeah, right. Part of me also kind of feels like that might have been the only reason Odette was blind in the book, so that there's an excuse for someone to not see her obviously picking up the hair at the final act.
Yeah.
But
that's a shame to think that.
And also why the birds had to die, which is also a shame.
Yeah. Birderers. All of them. So she makes the dolls, and by doing that she like makes a little mold in the dirt, and then pours the wax in, and she makes one that is a fetish, right? That's like the fake kind of Chekhov's smoking gun one, so that she doesn't get caught with anything, and the other one is the actual doll.
Yeah. And
she comments in that moment, she's like, well, I'm never going to be a sculptor or an artist. So I just have like, did you ever do like candle drip art as a kid?
I have not.
That's the picture I have in my head. Like, did you ever do like drippy sandcastles at the beach? Yeah, that's what I have pictured in my head, but like in a doll form, like they are just the most malformed little things.
See, I have the image of that one Squidward painting from SpongeBob, the one that he tries to sell as bold and brash, but belongs in the trash. It's just like a little misshapen person-looking thing.
Yeah,
with a little like tuft of like troll hair doll, but it's Mistress Serena's doll hairs.
Oh God.
But I really liked that moment because she kind of starts to tap into all of the people that have been with her. Well, both the ghosts that possess her and like her ancestors, and she very specifically doesn't think about her parents because she's thinking about, oh, here's old Nana, here's aunts and uncles and other relations that have passed on, my ancestors, but she very specifically doesn't want to think of her parents as ancestors.
When she finally starts to connect during like the battle proper, and she's like, I don't want to think about it, and that actually was sad because she does end up seeing her mother. And
yes,
she's like,
her mom comes in, yeah.
They are dead. And I was like, oh, they are actually dead. And like, there's a few things here that I liked, right? Like this connection. I'm so happy that this connection happened, that her turning the tide of the battle ultimately became something because she's finally accepted, like, this is who I am. It's not just me and being kind of outcast from my family and community. This is how I connect to them. This is how I am a part of them, and everything that they are and were is also a part of me. I thought that was a really beautiful message. But there's also this like villain monologue in the middle of that happening from Headmistress Sarita. And it very much like, I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you kids.
Yeah. But that whole conflict was so gory. Yeah. It was so much more intense than I thought it would be. Like she scoops out the stomach of the doll, right? Ooh. And that shoves the little femeline out. And like it sends it like squirming. She basically gives her a C-section.
Yeah. And it's gross.
She stabs into it, and like it makes her scream and fall over, and the entire greenhouse that she's in just explodes into a bunch of little pieces. And assistant headmistress Victoria comes running along and is slammed into a support beam and, falls unconscious. And it's just hit after hit after hit.
There were so many. And after Issa kind of C-section yeets the femeline out of Headmistress Serena, she loses all that youth and she becomes this like disgusting old hag.
Yeah, or she loses all her fat and all she is skin and bones. I think it was the description.
Yeah, like the skin specifically is like hanging off of her bones. And I was like, ew. Oh, ew. Like, I live for stuff like that, right? I love very awful, gory descriptions, and I especially love it in kidlit because I'm weird like that. But also, as a kid, I would have loved that, right? This is so gross, and because it's so gross, it feels grown up. And that's what I would have been living for. So, like, as an adult, I'm recognizing that I have problems with this, but I think as a kid...
Oh, you have problems? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No, I have no problems. I'm amazing. I'm perfect in every possible... I'm more perfect than Mary Poppins. So there's that. In any case. I think as an adult, when I'm looking at it, I want different things in the back portion of this book and for other things to be lit up. But I think as a kid, I would have been like, oh, okay, that explains why she had the tentacles. That explains how we went back and did this. That explains this. That like, and I wouldn't have the same problems that I have with it as an adult, which is really important to think about when you're discussing kidlit, because 37-year-old Jessica is not the target audience.
Yeah.
And kidlit is so weird because it's got all that gatekeeping. And I think a lot of parents are going to be like, oh my God, no, it's so gory. But every single one of their kids would be like, yes, fight and be gross and rip off body parts and snap heads and fireballs everywhere. And because there's so much happening. It's not just that it's gory, right? It's that there's so much action happening across these couple of chapters. There's people getting thrown into oh my God,
pillars,
thank you, like support beams and getting knocked unconscious. There's a creepy villain going around going like, where are you, right? And you can almost hear that coming off of the page, and everything about this description touches on like every sense that you have. And so in that sense, it's so good.
Yeah. Can I just say, at some point during the fight, Myra comes by and pulls Issa away from like a killing blow from something, right?
Yeah.
Like she's about to like, she's also being controlled by the headmistress and being forced to go towards the fountain where the femeline is currently sitting, so that it can eat her. And Myra comes by and yanks her off the fountain, right? And in the process, she gets caught by the headmistress and gets dumped a pitcher of poison essentially on her that shrinks her until she's like minuscule and she could get shoved into like a little teapot. And I, for a hot second, thought that the headmistress was going to just stomp on her or slurp her up like a little little snail or something, just completely demolish and pancake this, this little girl, literally this little girl.
Yeah, I thought, right, so we had all this talk about time travel and learning how to time travel and connecting to things that could help her time travel. And so I thought we're going to watch all of her new friends die right here.
Mm.
And that's going to be
Mm.
the driving force to her like really making this traumatic connection to this power to send her back in time.
Yeah.
We did not, however,
We did
watch
not get
all of
that,
her
no.
friends die, which was nice, right? I don't actually.
It was a metaphorical death, I think, but yeah, we did not
Yeah,
watch them die.
we did not watch everybody die. And then after Headmistress Serena has been taken care of, there's this weird retconny amount of chapters.
Yes. That is my big conflict.
That was like my big conflict. My other big conflict was that Issa and Lionel do in fact have a kiss, which I went over last week. I greatly disapprove of, not because it's, middle grade, who gives a they're like 12, but because he's like 212, right? Like he's been on that property for a very long time. He's not actually just 12 years old, in the same way that it's not like a 17-year-old vampire. He's actually a 517-year-old vampire, and I greatly dislike that sort of relationship. And like if Lionel had died last year, I don't think I'd care. But because Lionel is so much older than Issa, it felt so weird. And then we get to jump into all the weird retcon, right? So like we get to meet her Uncle Byron, who was part of the Global Magic Authority, and he is conveniently a curse breaker, so he's coming to like break Lionel's curse and the curse that's on the land. They find another footprint of another animal, and they're like, oh, it's a time jumper, and I think Issa will be able to connect with this because she's got the ability to connect with animals, and aren't we lucky that this one actually lets her do it? And then she jumps back in time and she saves her parents, and then they go to the tree, but Lionel's not there anymore. And they also turn Headmistress Serena in, so like
all of the fight didn't happen technically. It's a completely new timeline where she didn't meet Myra. She doesn't have all of these connections that she previously had, these moments that built both her character and developed her relationship with her classmates. We don't get any of that anymore. She pops into 3 months ago, just before her parents died.
Yep.
And she's like, I jumped through time. And they're like,
ha-ha.
Okay, yeah, sure. And they go to Master Gonzalez, and all it takes is showing him the shadow jumper's feathers, and he's like, yes, I know exactly what happened here.
Yo.
And that kind of turns into them turning in Mistress Serene. That kind of still kind of confused me, like how that kind of like happened, and how they kind of like took her word for it, like people outside of like Master Gonzalez and her parents, who were explicitly said that they believed her, no questions asked, right?
And then they go back to the graveyard and they raise up poor Rachel, who just wants to sleep for all eternity and has to relive all of her stuff again. And that's how they clarify these things. But like, why none of these other people have any reason to believe Issa?
Yes.
And you're right, it completely erases all of these relationships, it erases this fight. And my thing was that there's no point in these earlier chapters where her going back in time mattered or showed up in the background. Right? There wasn't like, okay, like this is where the car hit the tree, and like maybe there's shadow jumper footprints or something there. There's no, oh, I don't remember putting the psychedelic pickle there and it actually came from her. Like, while it is kind of controversial to talk Harry Potter, that is something that was actually very well done in Prisoner of Azkaban when you went back to go save Buckbeak, was all these extra things that came up that were kind of inexplicable beforehand. Came up when we went back with the Time Turner, and none of these things came up when Issa went back in time.
Because I think at one point it was like the horology professor was like, oh yes, the paradox, and there won't be two Issas, this is going to be just one Issa, and it's all fine. I'm like, that's just so weird to me. I really would have loved to have those inexplicable moments to be like, oh, it's just the wind, but it's actually Issa unlocking the window from the outside or something.
Yeah.
Having all those little moments that kind of built up to it, because the last 2 chapters just erased the first 27.
Yes.
Like, and so they go back to the tree to use a chainsaw and cut Lionel out, but he's not there. The tree is empty.
Sad.
There's an empty. That was incredibly sad. But that makes me think, like, is it because her uncle broke the curse on the land and that released him? Is it because, Mistress Serena died and wasn't able to complete her sucking up children's youth in a very Mother Gothel way?
Yeah.
Situation? Like, that was really just not clear. Like, I liked the emotional impact of no one else remembers Lionel except for Issa and Myra. Myra's the only other person who she told, right? She wanted to keep it a secret from her parents. She didn't want to tell anyone else about him, which would mean that Uncle Byron in this timeline would not know that he's cursed or there is a curse there, right? So unless he was just doing the general curse on the land, maybe, but like, it also makes me think, like, why did Lionel show up in the original timeline and not in the second one? Is it because he was awoken when Issa's parents died at his tree, and like the resulting magic of 2 powerful witches and, the magic that the headmistress wove to make them crash kind of revitalized him, or was because he mentioned that he just kind of sleeps for a while and wakes up sometimes.
Well, yeah, and he also had a comment about he wakes up because he's like a protector of the land. And I'm guessing because Serena is no longer there, that he no longer needs to be there either. But at the same time, there's no definitive answer to that.
Yeah.
There were a few other things that I also was not entirely clear on by the end of the book. One of them was the curse on the land. I'm like, well, then is it gone because Serena's gone, or is it still there? Or is she going to call her uncle back and be like, hey, I know we don't really know each other very well, but could you just like sprinkle pixie dust and fix this? And the other thing was about the night children. What were the night children?
They just kind of vanished.
Yeah.
There was not much about them. They were mentioned like 3 times in like the first and second act, and then they just never kind of were at all.
Yeah, and so I was wondering, like, are the night children, like, the older girls that were doing the patrols, are they the ones that are supposed to be the night children? At first, I thought Lionel was one of the night children.
That would have made sense.
And
it was Lionel.
And then I was like, wait, no, I don't think we ever actually got, like, this is the night child, and they're evil, or they're misunderstood, or there's something else. And so I was like, okay. And that was one of those things that was set up in, like, the first 10 chapters, right? Along with, like, remember your dolls. What the hell are you talking about? Remember my dolls. So the end of this felt, there were ups, there were downs, but I don't know that I enjoyed, as an adult, I'm going to have to separate this. As an adult, I don't think that I enjoyed the ending of this. As a kid, I don't think that I would have cared.
Yeah. I feel like the story is open-ended and not in the good way, but in a there are a lot of plot holes way, and I can see through the sheets kind of situation. It was a lot better than interdimensional basketball to save the day. I did really enjoy the actual conflict between Issa and the headmistress, including, Lionel and Myra in it, and then eventually Victoria, the assistant headmistress, who I do want to bring up, because this entire time I swore it was going to be like a little plot twist where it was Victoria who's the evil one and Serena is...
It was Victoria all along.
Essentially, yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was like a setup. But it turns out she was just a plant by the magic cops, and she was there to keep an eye out on the school, and at the end, at the conflict, she always goes, oh, I never liked her anyway, before she sets her on fire with a giant fireball.
That was kind of funny, though. I never liked her.
It was funny. Yeah, but like this entire time, I'm constantly getting this bad vibe from Victoria, right? And I guess it's supposed to be this sort of red herring, but a red herring also, you kind of need to make use of them.
Yeah.
in a more direct way than just giving her bad vibes on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Because the entire time she's very antagonistic to Issa. She's constantly harping about the rules. She's always like this intimidating presence whenever she shows up, especially as a foil to the kind, lovely Siren, who leads the school. And I guess
Kind.
that I can
Lovely.
see that kind of. But like she is described as beautiful and what were the words that the documentary crew was using at the end there?
Oh, yeah.
Agreeable and whatever it was, I don't remember off the top of my head. And Victoria just kind of felt like she fell by the wayside. She got knocked into a support beam, was out for the majority of the fight, and then she shows up, drops her one-liner, and sets a fireball. And it just feels like she wasn't used to her full potential.
I feel that way about a few things here. The pickles, for example. I really did enjoy the Kool-Aid pickles as a way to see into the future. I thought that was really cute.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have liked to have seen more of them or seen Issa make them instead of them being something that was given to her.
I was okay with it as they were, honestly. I feel like we got a lot of weird things and putting too much focus on specifically the pickles, but like on any one weird magical item, I feel would have detracted, I think, too much.
Yeah, I don't think that there needed to be like 5 chapters on it. I think I would have just preferred that Issa made them to give her more autonomy in the situation.
Or at the very least, like a flashback where she's making them with her aunt.
Yeah, because we got a little flashback for the dolls, right? And that was our explanation for how they get made and that they are technically illegal and bitter magic. And there is that funny little exchange between her and her Aunt Sabrina where Issa is like, wait, these are illegal. These are bitter magic. And Aunt Sabrina's like, report me.
What are you going to do? Tell on me?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll wait. Like I enjoyed that. That was cute. And it was barely a paragraph, and that was really all we needed to just move forward with the thing. And I would have liked to have had something like that with the pickles, just to know that Issa could do it, because so much of the setup of the story is what Issa can't do.
Yeah.
And how much, in the early chapters, there's a lot of her aunts and her family putting protections on her instead of her putting on her own protections. And as the story went on, I wanted to be able to see Issa do more. And we do actually see her do more. She by far has more autonomy here than she did in Fall of the House of Tatterley, or even at the beginning of the story where she's just like along for the ride as ghosts take over her body. But I wanted to see her interact with the world a little bit more on her own, as opposed to like Serena's coming for you, and the only reason you know that is because somebody told you.
Right.
As opposed to her figuring that out.
So like at the very end of it, when she gets onto her uncle and Master Gonzalez and Lionel are staking out the footprint where they're waiting for the shadow jumper to show up, right? They're there for a couple nights. And when she gets there, all Uncle Byron really wants is to be able to take a picture of her on the shadow jumper to show that it is a thing that can happen, right?
Yeah.
And then she's supposed to immediately dismount. But of course, Issa being Issa is like, I'm going to mind meld with this magical creature, and we're going to go, 16 weeks, 10 days, and 4 hours into the past to when my parents died, right? And Uncle Byron's like, you got to get off. Issa, come on, get off. And he's shooting lightning to try and like get her to get off the back of this shadow jumper and like knocking trees over to get in her way. Meanwhile, Master Gonzalez is like, go, do it. Don't stop. Keep going. Like he's totally down for like all of this insanity. And she goes through the little thin patch of reality, and she sees time, and she comes out the other side with a bum arm and white hair, holding a fist of feathers and waving down her parents' station wagon to get them to stop driving into the fog, right? And I really liked the inclusion of there being a lasting effect, like a lasting consequence to her actions. Like she uses the use of one of her arms. She has to. Oh, she's always got it in a sling now because the magical healers don't think that she'll ever use it again.
Yep.
And I really enjoy that just because we so often don't get permanent consequences.
Yeah.
in general, but especially in like kidlit. Like there's a smack on the wrist and like, oh, don't get in trouble again, but thank you for saving the town, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Here's a key to the to town hall.
500 points to your house specifically so that
Yes.
you win a cup that you don't actually deserve, but go
Yeah,
on.
right. But I still think the last two chapters just erased everything that came before it, and this would have absolutely have been a 5 out of 5 for me if it were if that hadn't happened, if like she had attempted the time jump but had seen that it was inevitable,
Yeah.
that she was just like a ghost in the past, she couldn't do it herself, she had to, it was still this tragic moment of her losing her parents, and having to come to terms with that.
Yes.
But like
That's
the just this entire thing just kind of felt not like hand waved away, right? It wasn't all just like it wasn't just all hand waved, and everything is fine. I completely lost my train of thought. Consequences, ghosts in the past, parents are dead, and she has to come to terms with that.
yes.
God, I completely forgot. I just lost my train of thought. My own fumble made me lose my train of thought.
It's
I
okay.
don't know what the point was of me rambling.
I can continue this ramble because I
Go for
also
it.
agree that in a lot of kidlit especially and high fantasy especially, I feel like we get told that there are consequences to magic and we don't often see that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
permanence. I can
Yes.
think of very specific times where we do see this big whoopsie issue. One is Labyrinth Lost, right? Where she's like, oh, I wish I wasn't like this. And she's like, oops, you erased your entire family. Big consequence.
Yeah.
Full Metal Alchemist, where they want to bring
Mm-hmm.
back their mother and they end up losing a body and an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And what they bring back is not even their mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see these consequences where her hair is changed, she no longer has it's her left arm, right? She no longer
Mm-hmm. I
has
think
use of
so.
her
Yeah.
left arm. And I'm like, okay, like these are consequences. Like what she did was big. But I agree with what you were, I think, trying to say earlier in that I would have preferred that she not be able to rescue her parents, that this
Yes.
becomes a
Mm-hmm.
story about grief and acceptance of loss and of oneself, because in going back and getting these things back, it changes the message in this story.
Yeah. I do remember what my train was heading towards. Um, so
Another train.
another train. We're going to Shinnikitty.
No.
But the death of her parents were not only diminished, the effect of her parents' death was diminished with them coming back at the end, but like this entire time going into this book, knowing it was a middle grade, knowing that they can't permanently get rid of the adult figures in her life, I felt like everything was a little like all the struggle was not futile, but like it didn't have the same impact it might have had she failed in the end, because we're
Mm-hmm.
going this entire time and I'm like, all right, knowing the limitations of the genre, knowing how most middle grade books go, the parents are going to come back. She's either going to succeed in the time jump, or they were never dead to begin with, and she's going to have them back, all safe and sound, right? And everything's
Yeah.
going to be hunky dory. The bad guy's defeated. She saves the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would never stop talking about this book had she failed in bringing her parents back. If she either failed in the time jump or she succeeded in the time jump, but she wasn't believed, or she was a ghost in the past, or somehow unable to save them. And I
I
feel
think what
like,
I would have liked to have seen was that she failed in the time jump,
mm-hmm,
and she has a big emotional moment there, and then also begins to really come into that conduit again and
yeah,
sees both of her parents. And in order to see her parents, she has to find a way to be in control of being a conduit and
mm-hmm,
growing in that power, which is something that we hadn't really seen her attempt to do, right? Everything about that power angers her because it had put her in danger. It made her lose herself. There was no way for her to control it. And so I think having her parents be dead and having that acceptance, like when she sees her mom, when all of the ancestors are coming into her, I think that was a really beautiful moment. I think there could have
mm-hmm,
been another moment like that at the end of the book. And I also think there should have been a moment like that with Lionel, where, they open up the
Mm-hmm.
tree and Lionel's body is not there. And
Mm-hmm.
then she turns around and maybe he's like waving at her and he disappears because he's
Yeah.
moved on. And I would have preferred to have a visual on that as opposed to just kind of this like, oh, we're going to get him out of the tree. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. He's not there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially because the chapter in which we go back there is like an entire chapter of we have to go to the tree, we have to open the tree, we have to go to the tree, we
Mm-hmm.
have to open the tree. I can't tell you why we have to open the tree, but we have to open the tree.
Right.
And then he's not there.
Or at the very least, if he was not going to be there, then their final goodbye, because he does kind of say like a goodbye, and she goes, she thinks to herself like, "Oh, I'm never going to forget you." Some kind of situation. If that goodbye was a little bigger, a little heavier, a little bit more like Lionel knows what's going to happen. He kind of figured it out. Where if she goes back in time, he never gets revived. He's gonna disappear. He's not gonna come back, and either it's because of the curse or because of the headmistress being dealt with early on, or whatever reason that spurred his coming to back to life, right, quote unquote life, no longer needing to protect someone, and he would have had like a very like emotional goodbye with her. I think it would have been it would have lessened that whole we're not entirely sure what's going on here moment at the end, I think.
Yeah.
Or at least it would have been like, oh, now I understand why Lionel said all those things before she time jumped. Like he knew, like it would have been a confirmation of he knew what was going to happen, and we can make that connection that he was saying goodbye for real.
You know what else could have been really cool?
Yeah.
Because Lionel is, undead thing. Either he exists out of time, which meant that he was like with time jumping Issa, or the two Issas do exist, and so there could have been the other timeline where she goes back and she meets Lionel, and he's like, oh, finally, this event is happening, because he'd been dealing with both future and past Issa the entire story, which would have made how he knows certain things a little more understandable, I think.
Or like where he knows to find her too.
Yes, that too, because sometimes he just shows up and I'm like, how do you know where she is? All the time. There's even a spot where, it's when she's out in the barn before Headmistress Serena comes to get her, and he just shows up and he's like, she's coming for you. And Issa jumps, she's like, where the hell did you come from? But like, all right, how did he get in there? How did he just appear? Because we never really, he's not a ghost, right? We've clarified that he's not a ghost. We've clarified that he's not a zombie. He just kind of exists there.
So not quite dead, not quite undead.
Yeah. And we never really got a clear definition for what he is, along with like night children and the curse and other things that eventually just become, null because of her time travel.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I wonder this. Because when I was 12, right hard in the target audience for this, I was in my fan fiction era. Would you have written fan fiction for Issa Igwe?
If I was 12?
Yes. Connect with 12-year-old Maggie. Would the open-ended questions here have sparked fan fiction for you?
I don't think so, no. It just would have sparked like 30-year-old Maggie's reaction of confusion and, being sad Lionel's gone, but like, put down the book, move on to the next one.
I think I would have written my own explanations.
Yeah, you would have written the fix it fic.
Yeah, the fix it fic. Absolutely. Because that's what most of my fan fiction started as, was just like, no, I don't like that. That's wrong. And so you just fix the issues with it.
Meanwhile, my quote unquote fan fiction was blatantly stealing from things like Avatar and Aragon and everything, and just putting it into my own fantasy world and calling it original work.
It's so original. Why is that? Because it's here and I wrote it with my hands, and so it's
never mind
original.
that I would write the exact scenes like from like waterbending and all that, and just stealing lines word for word because I was 12 and had no idea how to be original yet.
Oh my god. I think I would have written fan fiction for it. I think I think I would really have connected with the magic in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like that about both of these books that we did with Shanna Miles. I think the world building in them, minus these last 10 chapters, I think the world building was really solid. That we see a lot of Southern culture, we see a lot of Southern Gothic imagery, we have, you know, the Spica system that's very unique. It's at least something that I've not heard of. It's not something that I've seen done by Hollywood, right? Because voodoo and hoodoo has been corrupted and twisted by Hollywood, and so there's really no like accurate portrayal of that at this point. I like that some of the things that come up, right? It's not just unicorns and mermaids. There's also these fairy fowl. So there are creatures that are unique to her world and the things that she needs. And I really did enjoy that.
Yeah, the world building is great. It's definitely deserving of like a 7-part series. Just a big sprawling world where we do get to see all of these other things, and I feel like it's very jam-packed just into Tatterly and this book, Issa Igwe. I feel like had Shanna Miles had the space to, I don't even know if that's something that Shanna Miles would have wanted to do, but if she did and she had the space to really kind of spread out, I feel like these stories could have been much better paced, I think.
Yeah. I wonder, so I know like industry-wise, there's a big push for shorter middle grade and young adult. Where there was a push for longer, and now they're like, well, we're no longer in the pandemic and nobody wants to sit with a long book anymore because we're not home all day. And I'm like, yeah, we're not home all day.
For real?
Sure,
right.
Sure, but okay. And so now they want shorter books, and so I wonder if the endings here for both Tatterly and Issa Igwe were kind of victim of that, where it felt like the first part was something that would have fit if it just had like another 5 or 10,000 words, but these got cut for the sake of the book being like a centimeter smaller.
Who knows? I don't really know. I mean, I would assume that Tatterly would have been written in the early portions of the pandemic if it was written within, like physically written within the last 4 years. If it was, written and then immediately published within the fastest possible timeline, it's maybe, but
yeah. And Fall House of Tatterly was published last year. It was 2023. So,
in a best case scenario, if Shanna Miles was able to finish it within, 2 years before publication, I don't know. It just,
yeah.
I love the world building. I love the magic system. I loved all of the little details that we got to see and all of the twists on expectations of magic as a genre.
Yes.
Especially in middle grade. I loved all of that. The pacing for the first 20 chapters was great. The last 10 chapters just kind of fell flat. Yeah. I feel like.
I feel like that about Tatterly as well, where like the pacing was really well done until the end.
Yeah.
And then she dropped the ball.
A little bit, yeah.
Ha ha, basketball. Ha.
Basketball pun, yes, I see.
Yes.
I just wanted to see it, like, especially at the end, slow down a little bit. Because it was both, like, dropped and but it was also like so fast paced. I feel like we didn't get enough time to sink in like the Femelina details and the siren details that we got from the puppet, right? Their classroom in a box.
The puppet. I don't know why I'm making these hand signals like this. Like I'm making like crab claws, and I'm like the puppet. Stimming. Like this is
a puppet. Like you're controlling a Muppet.
Yeah, like these little Muppet hands. This is exactly what parasites do. They just make little crab claws, crab people claws. And again, I'm on an audio medium. I don't know why I keep doing this.
I feel like it could have been amazing, but it fell just short of great.
Yeah,
it hit all those points up until we get to the third act.
Yeah,
because because when we were reading the first 20 chapters, right, and I had thought we were reading to 15 for the first episode. And I stopped at 15, and that's when we get the reveal from Lionel about, oh, she wants to kill you, or she killed your parents, right? That's the lore drop at the end of chapter 15. And I felt like it ramped up there, because I remember the beginning was very slow, but it ramped up once we got to the school and the death, and it just kind of blazed forward, and I could not put it down. I was so upset when I got to the end of chapter 15. I was like, oh, I can't read this for another week.
You're like, Jessica, catch up.
But like this last bit was just a little bit
Yeah, and like we kind of said it earlier, where it wasn't bad, right? Like,
no, it wasn't bad at all.
It wasn't terrible. It wasn't like, oh my god, I can't believe I read this whole book, blah 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 blah. But there were things in the end of it that really did just kind of like, my opinion of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which, and in the end specifically, if we're just talking about these last 10 chapters, right? The action was really great, but the explanation for us getting there was not.
Yeah.
And I'm so torn, because I really loved the action. I loved her language around the action. I loved the presentation of the action. But understanding what was happening was not something that was happening for me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
It felt like we had gotten through to the climax and up to the denouement with a whole chunk missing. Like, it could have benefited from like you said, a couple extra 1,000 words, just to kind of keep that pacing more balanced and keep keep it clearer than it was.
Yeah.
That was Issa Igwe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was it.
yeah.
I mean, I would say it's pretty solid. I'd give it like 3.5, maybe 4.
Yeah.
It's definitely something I recommend people pick up. Definitely something for your kids. Like, it comes out October 22nd, and so I would definitely be like, oh yeah, get it. It's totally a Halloween read. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I would love to see more Shanna Miles books.
Miles.
I would be Miles. I would be very happy to see more Shanna Miles books, but I'm still just hesitant because of that final act slump.
Yeah.
But I can only hope that with time, she gets her bearings and she's able to make it, not better. I don't want to say better, but make it more cohesive.
Yeah. Because, like, she really does have I really love the voice that she's got.
Yes.
I think she's really got that solid middle grade voice. And I'll just That's a wrap on this episode of Booked All Night. Click that follow button to subscribe to the show, and don't forget to drop a review. We're a small corner of the internet, and every little bit helps. Visit the link in the show notes to see our other reviews, find us on Instagram and TikTok, and join our Discord community, where we'll be running all of our giveaways, posting excerpts, and streaming our interviews live. When we hit 100 members, we'll run our first giveaway. Booked All Night is produced by Rob Cook. Whenever you share an episode, be sure to tag us at Booked All Night Pod and say hi to our guy in the sound booth. Join us next week as we launch into Remember Me Tomorrow by Farah Heron. Until next time, my little Libranauts, this is Jessica Mary and Magdalyn Ann signing off and reminding you to stay booked all night.